I will introduce to you here, we have two ambassadors, the ambassador of the United States, Her Excellency Samantha Power, and we have also ambassador of Rwanda, who was previously the president of the Security Council, Eugene Richard. And of course, we have also the president of the Security Council, who is here, Mark Grant, from the United Kingdom. So Your Excellencies, of course, the people of South Sudan would like to hear why you are here and where are you going to and when will you come back?
So we'll be very short. I think that our colleagues states it was important that we visit the Republic of South Sudan this time to express, first of all, our support to the ongoing IGAD-led political dialogue and peace process, and to unequivocally tell all parties that they should implement agreements that they signed. So we totally agreed with what the president just told us, that the only solution is the dialogue, good, political dialogue. And the parties must know that the people of South Sudan have suffered enough, and that the international community will not look on as a seemingly endless situation linger on. So since our arrival here in Juba this morning, we had two meetings, one with the members of the cabinet, and the second one with the President of the Republic. They were good meetings, open, instructive, and I say candid. The Security Council was able to express our deep concern on what is happening in this country, the continued suffering of people. We also listened to the views of the government, to also their programs, which is still continuing in these days ahead. So anyway, we will head now to Malakal. I think that this is it for the time being. I want also to give you to my colleague Samantha Power also to say something.
To South Sudan, in a spirit of friendship and partnership, the Security Council played a very important role in the run-up to South Sudan's independence, taking a very strong stand at a time when the referendum for this country seemed in doubt, when it wasn't clear whether it would go off on time or whether the results would be respected. The Security Council took very strong measures back in the run-up to 2011, in the run-up to the referendum, to ensure that the voices and the will of the South Sudanese people were heard. And so we come back to South Sudan now at a time of great peril for the people of this new country. There is a grave risk of famine that now looms, that hangs over this visit. 50,000 children under 5 are at risk of dying by malnutrition in the coming months. And around half of this country's population is facing grave food insecurity. Moreover, as all of you know, the killing is continuing, notwithstanding the fact that a cessation of hostilities has been signed. So far, there has not been near the implementation of that cessation of hostilities that is needed to bring peace and stability to this country and get it back on track. And so this Security Council visit comes in a way as an emergency visit to this country to underscore to the leadership here just how important it is to follow through on the commitments made, to put together a transitional governing body in the run-up to elections. We will engage Riek Machar as well, probably tomorrow, and we will deliver a very tough message to him as well, that the international community will not tolerate violations of the cessation of hostilities, and that people who spoil the peace agreement, people who commit gross violations of human rights, must be held accountable. That is our message to all parties. We have delivered that message here. We will deliver it to Riek Machar. The last thing I would say is just to put, again, a sharp point on this. There is no military solution to what ails South Sudan. President Kiir has sent this message using his voice to send this message, but it is important that all parties live by this message. We hear very worrying reports of more arms being brought into this country in order to set the stage for another battle, another set of battles when the dry season commences. This is deeply alarming. And so the round of talks now underway in Addis have to be taken seriously by both parties, and there has to be urgency in the manner with which both delegations try to achieve the lasting peace that the people of South Sudan have coveted for so long. With that, we'll take your questions. The original, the second, the reaffirmation, that have gone unheeded, and we do not see the urgency that needs to be brought to these negotiations. And so we are, again, very disappointed that that deadline has come and gone. However, we would note that the government and Riek Machar are still in talks. The council will be seeing the IGAD ministers tomorrow. That is the foreign ministers representing those countries that have been so active in trying to bring about a peaceful solution. And when it comes to your second question, we will, the council has made very clear that it is prepared to impose consequences if there continue to be spoilers, if there continue to be people carrying out gross violations of human rights. We seek to coordinate council action as best we can with those IGAD ministers, and so that's why one of the additional reasons those meetings tomorrow are so important.
Perhaps just on that last question, relations with relevant parties, including IGAD and the African Union, all appropriate measures, including targeted sanctions, against those who take action that undermines the peace, stability and security of South Sudan, including those who prevent the implementation of these agreements. That is a very clear statement by all 15 members of the Security Council that there will be consequences for those who try to undermine agreements that are reached in the Addis Ababa talks.
Well, thank you very much. They're going, ladies and gentlemen.
One issue that is particularly important for Luxembourg as a member of the Security Council is the issue of child soldiers. We know it's a huge challenge here. You have still a lot of children that are recruited or used in the armed conflict here in South Sudan. So it was important for us to address that point, both in our discussions with President Salva Kiir and also in our discussions yesterday night with Riek Machar, so to urge them to implement the commitments they have taken to end the use and the recruitment of children in the conflict in South Sudan. So that was an important message that we passed, and we hope that it was heard and that we will bring an end to this scourge of recruitment of child soldiers in South Sudan.
Could you tell us more about your discussions with Riek Machar? What was his reaction?
Our discussion with Riek Machar was focused very much on the peace process and the ongoing talks in Addis Ababa under the IGAD mediation. And he assured us that he was committed to genuinely engage in the talks to arrive at a peaceful solution of the conflict as soon as possible, stressing also that it needed to be a durable solution that addressed all the root causes of the conflict. So we hope that this discussion was useful also to encourage not only Riek Machar but also the government of South Sudan to redouble their efforts in Addis Ababa to come to an agreement as soon as possible. Like he said, the Special Representative was here. Her visit yielded a renewed commitment by the authorities of South Sudan to implement the action plan that they had signed up to. So it's an action plan that foresees concrete steps to avoid the use of children in armed conflict. Now we have to see, also that was the nature of our message, we encourage implementation of that action plan and implementation of this commitment. And we will get reports in the coming months to verify whether there has been progress in terms of taking children out of the armed forces and reintegrating them in civil life in South Sudan. A possible follow-up that we would envisage as the chair of the working group on children and armed conflict could be a visit by the chair of the working group on children and armed conflict to South Sudan, maybe later this year, again in a spirit of following up on and encourage the authorities, both the authorities and the SPLA in opposition, to fulfill their commitment and to end the recruitment of children. Than in the original site, but it's certainly not a solution that can be sustained, and the conditions there are really very dire. I think when we went there yesterday, it was a relatively dry day, so there was no flooding, but we understand that with the rainy season still on, the conditions are very difficult. So that also underlines the urgency of finding a solution to the conflict, allowing people to go back to their homes in security. About what type of measures the Security Council could take, we are usually talking about economic sanctions that we apply in other situations, for instance, assets freeze. But we are not yet at the stage where we would discuss the detail of the measures that we would take. It's really a message to both parties to say, if you do not make a genuine effort to come to an agreement, there will be consequences. It cannot continue like that. The negotiations have been already very protracted, and we need to encourage both parties to really now come to an agreement as soon as possible.
To make sure that hostilities and problems stop and that the displaced peoples go back to their homes. We are very worried for the humanitarian situation, whether it's for the children or for the women, and we would like that things go back. We were so happy the Council, has been following through the Sudanese story since the beginning and since the birth of South Sudan. And we were very happy that they did get their independence, but right now we are very worried for all these details. Yesterday there was a visit to Malakal, and the situation of the displaced people is something that we worry about. Another thing, we wanted to witness our support to the UN mission and the forces on the ground. We know that they have an incredibly difficult mission because they are overstretched somehow, overstretched between the military part and between the displaced people. So we were here to see how their needs are, what they're doing, and to give them support. Thank you. Negotiating table to stick to what they signed for, to try to help the UN forces in doing their work well on the ground, and to help to look closely to the displaced people problem. So that was
I'm Ambassador of Chad, and I am proud to be. I think what we have seen, it is better than many reports. It's the visual aspect of the reality, and we noticed that the people of South Sudan need really peace. Everywhere we passed, the people, the civil society repeated many times that they need peace. Enough is enough. I think that we should do everything it's possible at the Security Council level to help the people of Sudan to get peace in this country. And I think that we send the same message to the government and the leader of the opposition, that they should do everything what they can do to settle peace in this country. This country, which acceded to its independence since 3 years ago, doesn't need this war and this destruction. And I think this is the main message. And what we have seen is better than many reports, because we are receiving periodically report from the special representative and from some other sources. But what we have seen, it's more better than many reports. And I think we got a reality, a real aspect of the things on the ground. That is very important.
Engagements with President Kiir and with Riek Machar, but we did not hear much from them that gave us hope that there would be rapid agreement in the talks in Addis Ababa. I mean, both said they recognized that there was no military solution to the crisis, but the two positions remain far apart. And so the Security Council gave them both a very strong message and said that we were extremely disappointed by what had happened in this country over the last 7 months. The whole international community, who has been friends and partners of South Sudan in the whole independence process, in making sure that there was the opportunity for South Sudan to become independent, helping to put the independence road back on track, the referendum when it was going off track. And we had expected to be in a position now, 3 years after independence, to be able to help to build a new country, to build on peace and stability of the world's newest country. And instead what we see is a failure of leadership in the country, the leaders at war with each other, mass killings, a humanitarian crisis, and some appalling conditions for the ordinary Sudanese people. And frankly, the United Nations Security Council is annoyed and angry at what has happened, and we underlined a very strong message that there would be consequences of those who tried to undermine the peace process, that were not willing to put aside their personal agendas in the interests of their people.
You spoke to both
Ministers in Nairobi later this evening, and we shall be discussing with them what the next steps are. The United Nations Security Council strongly supports the IGAD-led peace process in Addis Ababa. A number of cessation of hostilities agreements have been reached. Those agreements have not been adhered to, and we will want to discuss what the next steps are with the IGAD ministers.
But how about the transitional issue?
The Security Council's view for the role of the IGAD peace process. We are supporting the IGAD peace process.
One of the reasons for the faltering.
Very emotional meetings, both with the IDPs in the Malakal camp, but also with civil society yesterday, and all of them said, look, what we want is peace. What we need is peace. We appeal to our leadership to make the necessary compromises to allow peace in our country. We need a cessation of hostilities. We need to be able to get on with our lives and look after our families. So that is a very powerful message that we heard from every ordinary Sudanese person that we met, and it is a message that we conveyed to the leadership. Thank you.
We wanted to deliver a message of support for the people of South Sudan. We also wanted to deliver some strong messages to the political leadership about what is expected from the international community and the members of the Security Council. We spoke, as you know, to both President Salva Kiir and former Vice President Riek Machar, and we delivered those messages. There must be a cessation of hostilities. There must be meaningful engagement in political talks which are inclusive, and there must be attention to the impending famine, which we know is a very real prospect and about which we're very concerned. It was very important for us to go to the IDP site at Malakal. Desperate conditions. It is extremely important for the Council to see on the ground what it is we're dealing with. We're paying very close attention to South Sudan. We've been extremely concerned about the IDPs that are on the protection sites, but also the people who are displaced across the country. And it was a searing experience for the Council to see the conditions in which those people are living, and we certainly will be continuing to pay attention to that. Finally, I'd just like to say that we express our full support for the UN mission in South Sudan, for the new leadership, the new Special Representative of the Secretary-General, Ellen Loge, and we will be paying extremely close attention, even though we are now returning to New York. one final point, we will also be engaging with IGAD ministers, and that will be very important if the process in Addis is to work and if we are to see some real progress after this, frankly, extremely disappointing period in the affairs of South Sudan. Thank you.
Well, I saw in South Sudan what I knew I would see, which is some of the most resilient people that the world has ever seen, people who've been through so much over so many years, again, struggling to get by, facing a very difficult food situation, facing in many cases large-scale displacement, but with that great South Sudanese spirit, which says we've birthed a new country not that long ago, we can get through this. The United Nations is here. We, the Security Council, have come to support their efforts to protect civilians and to get food to the hungry. I was very honored to be here at the same time President Obama announced another $180 million in food assistance for the people of South Sudan. The United States and South Sudan, as you know, have a very long-standing, or the South Sudanese people in the United States have a very long-standing, deep friendship. But I did want to underscore that the funding authority that the United States used to release this money is it's the first time we've used it since 2008. So it gives you some sense of our sense of the emergency and the crisis facing the people of this country as we head into a difficult dry season. In terms of the political situation, the Security Council came with great unity and great conviction to press upon and impress upon President Kiir and Riek Machar, both of whom we were able to meet with yesterday, Riek Machar by video conference, to impress upon them the importance of securing a durable peace immediately. Cessation of hostilities agreements have been agreed to, pieces of paper have been signed, but you know better than I do that the fighting continues, violations of the cessation of hostilities happen every day, people are still dying. And it was bad enough when people were dying in conflict. That should have been enough for the leadership here to put their differences aside and find a way through this, what amounts to a man-made and political crisis. But now when you throw in the prospect of a looming famine, it becomes all the more urgent and imperative that these leaders find a way to compromise, find a way to put together a transitional authority, and help the beginning of what will be a long process of reconciliation for this country.
You mentioned a meeting or video conference with...
I think the important thing for the people of South Sudan to know is what he should have drawn, which is that the Security Council made it very, very clear that irrespective of the grievances that brought us to this point, irrespective of what caused him to break away from the government to break away from him, however you want to look at it, it is unacceptable for there to be violations of cessation of hostilities agreement. It is unacceptable for civilians to be endangered in the way that they have been. When atrocities are carried out by people who call themselves anti-government forces, it is incumbent on Mr. Machar to denounce and to the degree that he has command and control to investigate and punish anybody who would carry out atrocities, particularly ethnically motivated atrocities, which we have seen. He said that there has been some progress into an investigation into what the horrors that happened in Bentu. We need to follow up on that and make sure that that is the case. He said that he was engaging sincerely in the Addis Ababa talks, but we, the international community, are prepared to put much more pressure on him and to impose consequences for him or anybody in this country who does not pursue the path of peace, given the horrific human toll that this conflict is taking every day it goes on, and given how much worse it can get, again, as the food situation continues to deteriorate.